The latest in Iran, we bring you all of the most recent updates, the tragic failures of Abigail Spanberger's governance, and Eric Swalwell picked the wrong fight online. You won't want to miss it. All of that and more today on 10 Minute Drill.
Everybody get up, get up.
The story of America is the story of an adventure.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
We are a nation under God, and I believe God intended for us to be free.
Yesterday, in a special Monday bonus episode, we laid out what had happened so far up to this weekend. Since that time, we've gotten a few more updates. First, about the incredible operation that began this entire new fight. First, the fact that 49 of Iran's top leaders were all taken out in a single attack.
On February 28th, the full strength of America's armed forces came together in a unified purpose against a capable and determined adversary.
We know that the CIA had been monitoring the movements of the Ayatollah for weeks and coordinated with Israel on the strike that took him out. This from the New York Times. Israel had determined that the gathering would include top Iranian defense officials, including Mohammad Pakpour, the commander-in-chief of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Aziz Nasseradeh, the Minister of Defense, Admiral Ali Shamkhani, the head of the Military Council, Sayed Majid Musavi, the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force, and Mohammad Shirazi, the Deputy Intelligence Minister, and others. So again, consider the intelligence required to be able to plan an attack on a breakfast that carried so many of the top Iranian leaders, but also at the same time to have attacks all over the country to ensure that that top tier of Iranian leadership was all taken out at once. It's been an incredible feat, and I believe that as people continue to learn more about this operation and the complex planning that went into it, there will be even more rallying around the flag. And the other impact that we've already seen from this is the rest of the world rallying to America's side. Part of the reason for that is Iran could not have handled this more poorly. By the way, that they began lashing out at everyone around them. We'll get to that in a second. We're going to talk a lot today about the Democrat messaging, Republican messaging, but one thing that the administration is heavily focused on is outlining the history that led to this moment. The fact that this is not President Trump's battle. This began under Jimmy Carter, and since that time, we have lost thousands of American lives due to Iranian terrorism and Iranian-funded activity around the world. Here is Scott Jennings talking about this point.
The central pillar of the regime is death to America. The other pillar is death to Israel, who is our ally. They have been at war with us. They have been killing American personnel and American soldiers for nearly 5 decades. This is not an attempt to start a war. This is an attempt to prevent further conflict.
One topic we covered yesterday is the fact that every Democrat statement about this, criticizing the administration for this, begins with some form of, we all know the Ayatollah is a bad guy. We all know he's a butcher who's killed Americans. We all agree that it's good that he's dead, but, and that but is really, really important here because what they're arguing after that is, here's the reason that he should be allowed to stay in power, threatening American lives with American assets all across the region, living in danger of the missiles under his control, but also our allies throughout the region who, again, have been attacked for the last several years, including very, very recently. This threat, even if Democrats can say we're not under threat of a nuclear weapon hitting us from Iran, we're under threat in so many different ways. One thing that we have seen in the Democrat messaging is the use of the words war of choice.
He has put American troops in harm's way. I unequivocally oppose this war of choice, and everyone should.
It won't be the billionaire kids of Donald Trump and his buddies that die. It's going to be the children of middle class and poor families all across this country who are going to die for a war of choice, a war of vanity, an illegal war.
I believe the president has made a war of choice where he's putting our troops in harm's way.
I think the president has started a war of choice.
So in addition to the people in that very quick supercut, you also had Pete Buttigieg, former Obama administration staffers, and you'll hear many more Democrat senators throughout the week use those words, war of choice. It's like a bat signal went out. I'd be willing to bet someone conducted internal polling that showed them that calling this a war of choice somehow helped them rhetorically in this debate. One thing you're also going to see is them moving goalposts around on what constitutes a threat. A number of them have said, we saw no intelligence that Iran posed an imminent threat, but we know that they posing a threat to U.S. military assets around the region. Just because they did not have an existing nuclear weapon didn't mean they weren't a threat to Americans, American personnel, and to our allies. We have seen that harassment, and one thing that President Biden took a lot of criticism for was Iranian proxies killing American military personnel in the region and doing nothing about it. And one person who I mentioned yesterday, but once again today want to highlight being very clear-eyed on the Democratic side on this, is John Fetterman. Every member in the U.S. Senate agrees we cannot allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon. I'm baffled why so many are unwilling to support the only action to achieve that. Empty sloganeering versus commitment to global security. Which is it? Watch as Democrats are painted into this very strange corner of the Ayatollah was bad, he was dangerous, he killed Americans, but here's why we believe he should have been allowed to stay in power despite all of that. This is going to be a very interesting debate, juxtaposing President Trump with decisive leadership that looks incredibly effective on the world stage and is leading other countries around the world to rally with us, versus Democrats here at home trying to say this is bad because, and we know the because is actually because they don't like President Trump. Now, if Iran wanted to limit the fallout, I'm not sure that they could have handled this worse, because after the bombs started falling in Iran, they responded by lashing out all across the region, bombing indiscriminately a number of other countries, many of whom house U.S. military assets, but hitting all sorts of civilian targets, leading to the entire world essentially unifying against them. First, for Middle East and Gulf countries, we stand united in defense of our citizens, sovereignty, and territory, and reaffirm our right to self-defense in the face of these attacks. That's a letter signed by Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. But it expanded far beyond that into Europe. Here's NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte.
All for one for all, because everybody supports here in Europe the fact that Khamenei is gone, that the nuclear capability is gone.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has been all over the place on this, including saying numerous times we had nothing to do with the bombing of Iran, but eventually landed on this.
Mr. Speaker, we are not joining the strikes, but we will continue our defensive actions in the region. France and Germany are also prepared to enable US action to destroy Iran's capability to fire missiles and drones from source.
And somewhat surprisingly, our neighbors to the north in Canada.
Canada supports the United States acting to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon and to prevent its regime from further threatening international peace and security.
And one international component of this that I don't think President Trump is getting enough credit for is the China angle. Both Venezuela and Iran have major oil ties to China that are now significantly disrupted. This from Politico. President Trump's latest attack on Iran takes a big economic bite out of one of America's chief rivals, China. Iran and Venezuela export most of their crude oil to China. And you'll see on that chart, Iran 87.2%, Venezuela 55.1%. So as we talk about the China threat around the world, does China have a better or worse chance of being able to attack someone like Taiwan with this kind of hit to their oil infrastructure? I think it's a very, very good question, but we know President Trump has been trying to play a long game with China. And as we talk about all of this international involvement in Iran, I think it's really important to note one of the Democrat criticisms that Republican foreign policy often gets is the sort of go it alone strategy, the fact that we haven't brought along enough of the international community into conflicts and actions like this. But you really can't say that here when you see just how much buy-in we're already seeing from Europe, from the Gulf states, and from the Middle East, everyone who's actually particularly relevant to this region. One important dynamic to track after an action like this is potential fallout through terrorism, terror sleeper cells around the world and things like that. And unfortunately, we've already seen one incident that has very clear terror ties. In Austin on Saturday night, a Senegalese man entered a bar and opened fire, hitting a number of patrons, killing 3 people. And what we've learned since that fact from photos. Photos from the Texas bar mass shooting show the subject, identified as Ndiago Diagne, wearing a shirt reading "Property of Allah," along with a new photo released of his shirt with the Iranian regime flag. Now, national security experts are already warning people to be vigilant of potential attacks like this anywhere in the country, but it's important to note again, right now, the Department of Homeland Security is shut down. A lot of our most important terror threat monitoring capabilities are tied to that. And so Republicans are trying to urge Democrats to come back to the table and reopen the government to keep our homeland safe, particularly at this time of high alert. Terrible story out of Virginia. A 41-year-old mother was stabbed to death by an illegal immigrant. This from the New York Post. Mother stabbed to death at Virginia bus stop by illegal immigrant with over 30 prior arrests. They go on to report, the accused killer has been arrested more than 30 times for a laundry list of offenses, including rape, malicious wounding, assault, drug possession, identity theft, trespassing, larceny, firing a weapon, contributing to the delinquency of a minor, and pickpocketing, federal authorities said. Now, I would remind you that the first action of Governor Abigail Spanberger when she got into office was to sign an executive order barring ICE from working with local law enforcement to remove people like this from the Commonwealth of Virginia. This will not be the last tragedy of this kind because of her focus on, one, protecting violent criminal illegal immigrants in the Commonwealth, but also making it more difficult to put people in jail who are guilty of violent crimes. For our You Can't Make It Up segment today, we have a very interesting back and forth between two people that I think are fairly notable. First, Dave Portnoy of Barstool Sports, somebody that I think, as just a political voice, is a good representative of the everyman. He has criticized President Trump for a variety of things. He's also supported him on a variety of different things, and this was his take on the bombing of Iran. I always laugh at yo-yos who don't have the first clue what information the president had that forced this decision. Even politicians who despise him but were briefed on the situation seem to agree with this operation. I guess a lot of podcasters know better. Gotta keep the lights on somehow. Borderline traitors, if you ask me. Iran is a terror nation with a long history of some of the worst human rights atrocities in the world. Nobody disputes that fact. They hate Americans, they hate Israel, they hate all Jews, they hate the West. They would kill us all if given the chance. They just murdered tens of thousands of their own people. The rest of the Middle East is on our side. The Iranian people are on our side. This isn't that complicated to support our troops in our country this morning. We're all on the right side here. God bless America. Now again, I think that's valuable because it shows what a normal person who's not hooked up to the IV of day-to-day politics interprets in this situation. But Eric Swalwell, current probably second place in the Democrat primary for California governor, off the top rope with this. Stick to sports. You're at least half right there. Your whiny blank ain't going to an Iran battlefield anytime soon. It'll be poor kids from where I grew up. Life must be pretty comfy in your suite. Stick to judging your favorite pizzas. The adults will sort out the wars. Now, that's a little bit wild because if you listen to what Portnoy actually said, it's very common sense, and it actually shows a little bit more depth on foreign policy than anything we've seen from Eric Swalwell in a long time. But speaking of depth in foreign policy, here's what Portnoy shot back. Hey Eric, I'd never heard of you, but quick Google search said you were literally removed from the House Intelligence Committee for having your office infiltrated by a Chinese spy named Fang Fang. Can't even make it up. Maybe sit out the national security lectures. Politicians, man. So I think that's awesome because, for one, he's right on the facts. Swalwell did get removed, and he cannot get access to a lot of intelligence because of his previous entanglements with a Chinese spy. We won't speculate on the sort of depth of those entanglements, but they were enough to cut off his access to this. But also, Eric Swalwell, just as a cartoon character person, is not anybody who should be criticizing others' takes on foreign policy or American politics. Here is Eric Swalwell at his most serious.
Hey, Congressman.
What's going on?
Hey, Congressman.
What's up?
Hey, Congressman.
Hey, what's happening? You're everywhere, man.
Excuse me, Mr. Wallace?
Oh.
Again, I think those videos are so cringe and uncomfortable, but that guy is a rising star in today's Democratic Party. Make it make sense. That is all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us on 10 Minute Drill. Please like, subscribe, leave us a review, and we will see you later this week.